Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Oracles of Theleston. We are going to be talking about skills today in storytelling. The last fireside chat, first half of it or so, talked about skills and their rework. It was an 8-hour day where they redid everything and came out with pretty much what's going to be more or less the final skills. They might add or adjust a little bit, but it's pretty close to final right now. And there's a supplemental document which it's not complete yet, but it's kind of the components for how spells are cast, and we'll definitely talk about that as well. But before we get into that, I wanted to kind of go around and let everyone get a chance to say hello here real quick before we get started. So whoever wants to, just start it up.
Hello, hello.
Hey, hey.
Happy Thanksgiving to the US folks.
Or to people who just like to grossly overeat at least a few times a year.
Exactly.
At least a few? Oh, come on, like every day.
Well, if you're at my house, it's. Yeah,
I
I'll see
want
my
to do it
pictures,
every day. I just don't,
Yeah.
All right.
The spirit is willing, but the heart might fail.
Yeah, exactly.
We have
So,
Snipe and Ombla in chat with us. I was expecting you guys seemed to end the play session last night pretty late. Seemed like it was
yeah,
noon
but
your
they
time.
didn't seem completely hungover, or like they would
Okay.
be from the amount of alcohol. So, so they're able to show up this time.
Okay.
Everyone likes your hat. It is a nice hat.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. I've been playing a little bit, well, quite a bit of Hero Song lately. I've been watching a lot of Westworld and No Man's Sky just got an update, so I'm trying to check
Ooh,
that out.
I'll have to check that out. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been like almost 100 days since we heard anything from Hello Games, and
Any
all of a
day.
sudden
Yeah.
it's like, hey guys, here's that
We have
update.
we have an update and we have tweets.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. Thanks for the heads up.
You guys played Talisman last night. At some point,
Yep.
we gotta get to playing Hero Song together.
For sure.
It's not that great to play together right now. I think
Yeah,
servers haven't been super stable, but
I would say even more than that. Once there's actual purpose to the game
yeah,
and to be in the world, then definitely. Right now, it really is like roll a new character, kick ass along around the world, maybe craft some better gear, maybe get some cool drops and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like okay, well that's it's part of a
yeah.
game, but let's
So it definitely shows the core mechanics work, but there's a bit more literal world building to be done.
yeah. I gotta say though, I have not been having any luck on this round at Talisman. I think I've lost like 3 or 4 turns to random stupid crap, and we haven't gotten that far. People are already getting to like sevens and eights with their attributes. I'm still at like 3 and 5, so I don't have a flail yet either. So, um, yeah. But yeah, we're probably going to continue that one again another time because we probably got through about 50% of the game there. We decided to do the one where you kill the Dark Lord, the one at the end of the dungeon for the boss. So, yeah. So, skills. The main topic here. So, for a lot of this show, I think we're going to have the skills and the magic stuff just on the right side of the stream so that way folks can see what we're talking about while we work here. So let me just bring that up, and I'm actually going to bring up the metadata tab of the skills list first, because there's actually some interesting stuff to kind of look at and talk about there before we even look at the skills themselves. Let's bring that up. There we go. Folks can see it now. So there's a breakdown here of where each attribute, I guess how many times each attribute gets used, as well as what the different categories of skills, how many of each qualifier there are for what type of skill it is. So you'll see really quickly there is a high emphasis on perception and intelligence. and that's for, I would say, two reasons. One is the fact that this isn't a combat first game. It's about exploration and adventuring and investigation primarily. So if all you're doing is fighting, yeah, it would be a higher emphasis on combat related skills. That's definitely not the case here. So the other reason is because if you see there on the crafting, there's 102 crafting skills versus 27 combat and 25 magic. There's a huge emphasis on crafting, and perception and intellect, and the third highest one, physique. Those play a lot into crafting. Those definitely make a lot of sense to be the three highest, with crafting being so emphasized. But if you don't look at it in terms of, there being that many, crafting skills and everything, if it was all leveled out and there were, say, only 25 crafting skills, I think the numbers would be a little bit more balanced out. Brawn, I think, would still obviously be the smallest one of the lot there. Aside from probably the 27 combat skills, there's probably 10 crafting skills. Maybe there's a magic skill that uses brawn, and we'll look through those on the other sheet here in a little bit. Craft rather than crafting. So it's not just crafting; it's all trades and skills and that sort of stuff. Gotcha. Thanks for the clarification. So, what do you folks think about this? What do you think when you first saw this breakdown of the attribute usage and category usage and that sort of stuff?
I think the thing that crossed my mind first was looking at under the attribute usage columns, the number of usages there is 444. And the number of category usages is 154. And so I did kind of basic math, and I'm looking at, it seems that most usages will be of 3 skills at once. And that's my guess in terms of just basic math, with some that are only 2.
3 skills or 3 attributes?
Well, there's 444 attributes on the left side. And you divide that by 3, and it's 148. So some only use 2. But I thought that was kind of interesting that each usage requires a trifecta of skills.
I mean, I see 3 of them that don't actually even have their things listed at the bottom there, so maybe the counts are off a little bit, but yeah, I see what you're saying.
Still a work in progress.
Yep.
Yeah, I kind of want to see it in practice.
Yeah, and we'll hopefully be doing that here pretty soon on this channel. Every Sunday that we're not talking about the game, so that'll be quite a bit of fun.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what we can pull from it, and especially be kind of interesting to see how much we really can push non-combat focused gameplay forward, because in most PvP games it's pretty much kind of the dominating characteristic of it. At the end of the day, people want their actions, so I'm kind of excited to see one that really offers you an opportunity to work your way around that. It'll be especially interesting to me since I don't actually typically play those in PvPs. I've had terrible luck whenever I've tried to play someone who doesn't just fight their way out of things. I tend to get everyone killed.
Well, one of the things... Go ahead, Cole.
I just said I believe it.
Oh. Yeah, I
have a big mouth.
In D&D, after 3.0, once we got more of the diplomacy skills in, and I'm glad to see Intimidate as one of the skills that I don't remember seeing before for Revival. But I used to try and bump up Bluff and Intimidate and have characters that would either flirt their way out or intimidate their way out of fighting.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm hoping to do that for Theleston as well.
Fast talking was always a skill that I ended up using in GURPS. Completely get you with that. Definitely, whatever you can do to kind of diffuse the situation or bypass somebody quickly before they have time to think about the fact that you may not be the person you say you are. Yeah, that stuff's important for sure.
Yeah, it's unrelated, but yeah, snipe. That's actually the general problem of it is that I tend to be, yeah, what's the worst that can happen? And then I also, right, this is a role-playing experience, right? I don't want to be me. Well, the problem is I assume, well, if I take me, the person's attributes and kind of characteristics, and I strip out a lot of the fluff, and I end up with the terribly acerbic characters who end up just, again, they have big mouths, so if they try to talk their way out of things, it just goes badly. They can have all the skill points and attributes they need for it, but invariably, people just don't like being treated like dicks. Go figure. Anyways,
I don't know. If you intimidate them, you should be able to cow them from fighting.
but I try not to intimidate them. I'm like, no,
Okay.
he can talk his way out of this one.
No, that's
He
what I'm
might
saying.
Yeah.
I talk my way with intimidation
The problem is I
bluff.
just
and bluff.
they often just don't know when they should stop. They probably hit their goal, and had they stopped there, they would have been okay. But they went that extra bit, and then everything goes badly. I put character creation to the test. I help people learn how to roll new characters quickly. We'll put it that way.
So they, like I was saying earlier, a lot of what they did here was reduce the number of skills and amount of skills for the sake of improving storytelling and the flow of the narrative, rather than having it caught up in a lot of rules and a lot of skills and a lot of lookups and a lot of that crap. It should go quickly, it should go smoothly, and most importantly, it should support narrative gameplay. So if you're attacking somebody with a longsword, you're using your longsword skill, but it isn't just a generic longsword attack. You're actually going to explain what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and that's kind of what you're rolling against. And depending on how well you made the decision and what the narrator felt about, what you're attempting to do here, they may give you a better chance or a poorer chance of being able to complete the action with the roll, or that the result of the action may be stronger or weaker depending on how you decided to launch that attack, if it does actually hit. So that's part of the stuff that I feel like really helps support the narrative. You're not, rolling d20 against armor or some defense attribute and then rolling for damage afterward if you hit. It's more the idea that you're you're describing how you do this attack. And one of the nice things about this is you could even ditch the dice at this point and just do combat as a pure narrative sort of gameplay, which for the sake of expediency, or if it's just a group that kind of trusts the game master well enough to just do this sort of thing, it could be a much more fun way to play the game. Is just don't even worry about die rolls. Just say what you're doing. If your character's capable of doing it, if you've taken a look at your surroundings to make sure you're not, slipping in a pile of pig shit or something when you go to do that thrust, then you'll be able to do what you need to do and hopefully defend yourself intelligently when attacks come your way as well.
So, wow, I have a couple of questions based on what you just said.
Okay.
First off, some skills have been removed, or did you say they were removed, or they were rolled into other skills?
Yeah, I would say
What
they were
skills
largely
might those have been?
condensed. They were
So-
largely, yeah.
Give an example of that.
I believe there were a bunch of different ways that you would use the weapons themselves, like different types of attacks that you would do with them, like a swing or a lunge or whatever, and now it's just you have the weapon skill.
Yeah, a lot of that's probably a really good one. Originally, the combat set of combat abilities and I was probably I don't know twice as long as it was now, and so those have been condensed for ease of use. And I don't think though that a lot of the craft ones were condensed, and I don't believe a lot of the magic ones were either. I think it was mostly the uh, kind of maybe mundane isn't quite the word I'm looking for since it refers to combat, but some of the ones that just added extraneous bulk that would come
Yeah,
to a P&P.
that's one of the things they said is skills that you use maybe 4 times in a campaign at most. They decided just to roll into other ones, so that way, instead of having to spread your points thin among a bunch of various different things that you may or may not end up needing or need to use a lot, group those things together and maybe in the narrative experience your character was never good at doing X task, but they're good at doing all the other tasks. So when it comes to your character doing that specific task because they were never very good at it, they still have trouble with it. So even if you don't have all the fine, minutiae and granularity of all the different skills that now belong to one skill, it could still be done through role play that your character, in terms of riding horses or whatever, once they're on a horse, man oh man, they can ride the hell out of that thing, they can do tricks, they can do this and that, but they have the hardest damn time getting on the horse itself. That just because of whatever reason their characters just has a hard time bringing their body weight up on it or something. Who knows?
How is the revival system of skill acquisition simulated in the PNP, if at all? And what I mean by that is usage, skills being attained or atrophied kind of by usage.
That's a good question. I think we'll have to wait for Snipe to give us an answer in chat there, because I know that one's gone through a few different changes, and I know it's come down to like, well, if you've used it a few times and you have free skill points to spend, or whatever character or narrative points, that you can increase something that you've been using. But I know there was definitely a major break from the idea of, with revival, you'll autonomously be gaining and losing skills all the time as you use things and as you neglect using things. So that's one of the things that there were a hell of a lot more skills in revival, and because everything
Yeah,
was
there were over
completely
200.
yeah, and because everything is completely automated, it's not something that you had to manually track. That trying to do something even remotely to that level in a pen and paper game, it seems like the only way you could really do it is session by session. Like, things you didn't use that session, maybe you have a chance of degradation. Things that you used a lot, maybe you have a chance of increase. But that starts to get too mathy for the nature of what they're really going for here, I think.
Um,
Here, we got an answer, actually. That's a good question, Diggs. So the way the game works is that you earn contribution points that are awarded by the narrator as you play. The CP can then be used to buy skill advancements, take various narrator-presented opportunities, etc. So successful use of that contributes to the story. Successful use that contributes to the story will earn you points, and the narrator will present you with opportunities of the players to spend those points, including on skill advancement, based on the flow of the story. Hey, Sog. So yeah, that makes sense. So CP is something that you earn through gameplay and through playing things well. That's actually one of the things I really liked about playing D&D with a good DM is they'll reward you for taking intelligent actions and role playing your character rather than just all the experience he gets from killing things and completing quests. So I definitely like
Did
that.
I freeze?
Nope. Yeah, you did. Um, so the thing that I really like with that is if you really roleplay your character and you roleplay them well, and do things that really help the flow of the narrative, and keeping gameplay fun and interesting, you're going to be rewarded for it. And I would imagine it's one of those things where if you actually expend CP to take a narrator presented opportunity, and it goes well and helps drive things a good direction, you might be rewarded 2 or 3 of them back for it. So it's definitely a nice sort of thing. It's a currency of sorts that your character kind of accumulates and expends in kind of a soft way. It's not like the bits in your pocket.
And so my second question had to do with stances. Is there a simulation of stances in the PNP?
Yeah, I think stances are a thing, and I think there's going to be. I'm not 100% sure if they're skills of their own or if a stance is that you have certain skills and the combination of them allows you to use a certain stance. For example, using a one-hander, a two-hander, a one-hander with a shield. I mean, I would imagine if you've got a sword that's got that kind of mixed length where you can use it one-handed or two-handed, as well as having an optional shield or an optional offhand weapon, there'd be a lot of similar skills that would overlap in the use of those 3 different stances. But I don't know that they're actually skills of their own so much as just you have these groupings of skills, therefore you can use this stance. Again, Snipe's going to have to clarify on that one, because you're right, stances. I thought stances were going to be their own skills for sure.
Great. They are
In the
definitely in the
PNP.
PPM.
Oh, okay. So if you've got the skill, you can access the stance. So if your fencing is really high and the other opponent's fencing is really high, you can do the scene from The Princess Bride.
I like it. You get points for that.
Yeah, it's funny. I've actually looked at forums where fencers are breaking down, this, and this. Is like, well, how does this one actually counter this one? I'm not so sure about that. It's like, you fencing nerds. I wonder if Verde's actually read any of that stuff. You probably know.
So I guess I would have a question for Snipe. In the list that we're seeing, since stances are not in here anywhere, unless they're off to the right.
There's not a tab for
No.
stances yet.
So I just kind of wondered, are they going to be in like a subcategory in a different kind of thing? Are they part of the existing subcategories where under subcategory cut and thrust there are 5 stances? Yeah, I mean, I don't know how's that going to work for the PMP.
That's a good question. And I guess the other thing that I wonder with the stances is, are some of them going to be like tag dependent? Like, will you only know a style that exists, specifically in Kalasha if you haven't had access
Right,
to it?
so you start a new game and nobody knows anything because nobody's been anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, that's
right, and the group travels together.
Well,
and
presumably they came from somewhere. They didn't just materialize from the ether.
Right, so that's another series of questions in terms of character creator from the moment that you start your game. But still, it's like, how do you get to stances then in the PMP?
well, I would imagine.
There we go. We have an answer.
I would imagine you would get trained somewhere, that whoever or however your character got trained, that's how they develop their stance. And if they learn by, swinging sticks at a group of rocks that look like people or something to them, well, probably not going to have a very refined style. It's going to be probably some very primal caveman sword fighting.
Yeah, well, if they've learned how to break rocks with a stick, they're probably going to do okay either way.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, in the martial arts I had been learning, it was like a JKD Eskrima Lot mix. Basically, what they called the number one strike is pretty much your over the shoulder, overhand strike. It's like, yeah, that's the caveman strike. The most primal of humans knows how to do that one. So the answer here is stances will be listed separately since they can have many requirements, more than one skill, or a skill on a weapon, or a skill on a mark of the gods, or whatever. So they basically get their own appendix in the player's guide. A collection of related stances is a style, so you're going to list them in a book, with each style having a small intro page talking about the lore, then the info for each of its stances. I really like that. That's really cool.
And Side did mention that the stances will be listed separately since they can have many requirements, e.g. more than one skill, or skill and weapon, or skill and a mark of a god, or whatever, so they're going to get their own appendix, which says that stances are also going to be probably fairly numerous, or at least very...
yeah, I would think so.
Cover a large category or a large number of different, maybe martial art types.
Well, I remember when we were talking in the Meow, if you were using a greatsword or a longsword or a dagger, you could have 6 stances for each weapon style that you learn. That's a huge spreadsheet compared to this one.
Which hopefully, and as always, kind of the biggest challenge to me is that, and this is kind of separate of that, but right, there's always a challenge of how do you bring depth and detail and uniqueness to your play while not just bogging someone down with, an excess of rules or addendums that come into play. So stances, though, in that case, actually come off kind of elegant in a way, because you will be able to develop characters that are uniquely different. They might both use a longsword or hand and a half sword, but they can use them in entirely different ways, which means you can approach it or you can approach combat with vastly different tactics for your situation. And where I'll be interested to see that is where, if any, stances apply to maybe more improvised weapons, I guess we'll say, for those characters who are, again, not mainline combatants, because while combat, again, we know will definitely happen, it's not intended to be the primary point of the game, right? So hopefully those who are just carrying around the pack supplies, the guy who's got the, hopefully the guy with the frying pan, the cast iron skillet can do something, with it. Or at the very least, he'll, make a damn good victory feast.
There's an improvised weapon skill.
There is, but can improvised weapons become its own, style, for lack of a better term?
Oh, I'm sure there's a lot of that. I mean, that's one of the things I think about, again, with Eskrima in particular, is the idea is that you're using the same techniques with your hands that you're using with the sticks, that you're using with the knives, that you're using with whatever you've got in your hand. So the only difference with that is flexible weapons. They do use bullwhips a little bit, I think. Doesn't really work the same way. They don't use nunchucks. It's or flails or that sort of thing. So it's mostly going to be something rigid. But they pretty much use the same exact flow of mechanics and techniques and striking patterns and everything, regardless of what's in their hands. So, or if there's nothing in their hands. So that's one of the things that's kind of cool about it. You're drilling the same techniques and movements, but you could be using literally anything. So, cast iron skillet, no problem. It's the same thing you're going to be doing. It's just maybe you're not going to try to thrust as much with her. Maybe you're going to thrust and try to break their jaw or something. Cast iron skillet, though, I mean, don't underestimate. It's also because of that nice wide range. It's good for deflecting other attacks.
Hero's Song has a cool mechanic where witches have to be in a coven in order to use their magic. That makes me wonder about witches, other mages, and the strategy of like if you have to have someone nearby for ritual magic, how close do you have to be? You know, what happens if you move out of range, or people are these people trying to move themselves into a particular pattern around the battlefield? And what kind of stances might be involved? That also has me thinking of Fantastic Beasts and where to find.
Uh-oh.
Oh no, not again.
Talking about magic is bad mojo. And while we wait for him to come back, I think I imagine we'll see some of that, because we know that magic on a grander scale. Welcome back. We've seen that magic on a larger scale was planned to usually include require more than one caster. People, and as you scale up further, people need to control like the etheric flow, channel it. Other people are actually forming the kind of or handling, I guess, the targeting and purpose of it. So I imagine that it's got to be there somewhere, especially when we look at like the what were they called? Oh, it's on the screen. Cataclysm, war magic. Can't imagine that would be something easily performed by an individual. Although it'll be interesting to see if a party that maybe only has one caster, but he does get to that point of ability, can he use his other party members at least as some kind of, I don't know, conduit and or unwilling lightning rod to ground him, so to speak, for it.
Yeah, if you need a sacrifice as part of the ritual, then, you know, that's what party members are for.
Right? Don't worry, he'll come back, probably.
Yeah,
We'll
I mean,
wait
I
for you
think
at
I
the
got the
mortality gate.
impression in the discussions during the Meow phase that pretty much all magic required either a ritual circle, and therefore other people, or ley lines and or other people as buffer. And so in almost every case, it required others.
I would imagine there might be some ways to bring some of that power with you somehow, to be able to infuse something with essentially not just the rune for the spell, but the actual energy to launch it. Maybe a staff or an orb or something like that. So that's all done, you know, in preparation. And then when it comes time for the war, you march out there, cast the spell in the sphere shatters, releases its blast on the enemies or whatever. You go kind of mad a little bit because that's some real wicked stuff that you just unleashed by yourself, and it does something crazy. But yeah, I would imagine a lot of the stuff that would happen in a battlefield, you would almost have to have your own like tent, or something that's a little bit more secluded, I would imagine, to make sure that nothing would actually interfere with it. So I would imagine a lot of the magic is actually occurring from the encampment near where the battle is occurring, rather than like right smack dab in the middle of a war.
And it may be even something on a larger scale that they actually have to. A large part of effective large-scale combat is positioning to get your mages into a etherically beneficial point to where they can tap ley lines more efficiently, or better, or even battling over the control of said points. But again, hard to imagine in a small party to be a major concern. So I hope we'll see other craft come into it, some kind of imbuing of objects to, kind of give that individual caster more of a leg up if they need it. But again, knowing that magic is actually supposed to be challenging and uncommon, maybe the fine line where it actually becomes, or rephrase it. I think it'll be interesting to see where Theleston is able to make casting attractive when we're so used to it being kind of more uh, prodigious in its use in almost every other game, and very few games have any consequences for it, save maybe like some of the White Wolf games, Mage certainly.
Yeah, I think my concern is that if you make it difficult enough, people won't play Magic users at all.
Yes, so I'm saying that, yeah, I'd imagine in most cases, PnP party is going to be disrupting a major ritual rather than participating.
And of course, that will be up to the narrator, storyteller.
Yeah. So, yeah, magic. I feel like while we have this amount of information about the magic and a lot of magic stuff has been talked about, the actual, like, on paper mechanics of how magic is actually going to work might still be, in the works. It probably still has a little ways to go. They probably have
Well,
a
I
pretty,
hope so. I would think so.
yeah, I'm sure they have a pretty good idea of what they want it to be, but it's a matter of making it all work and lock in with everything else in a way that syncs up nice and tidy, and B, again, is something that works really well with the narrative experience. So whatever magic is, it's something that helps promote the storytelling rather than okay, well, I'm gonna spend the entire day enchanting these coins to make them look like they're gold, but they're really not. And then I'm gonna sleep at the end of the day. It's like, oh, that's lame.
Yeah, hopefully that can be a kind of hand waved off to the side.
Yeah.
I really would not want to see good narrative being disrupted by the minutia of daily tasks too much, unless it's something exceptional. But we'll see. I mean, there's a balance with everything in that.
Yeah. I mean, I could see if players are participating, I wouldn't imagine it's all of them. It's probably the more spellcastery people in the group, and the other people are kind of assigned to guard duty. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. The other nice thing about the whole narrative experience, especially if you do like a two narrator sort of thing where you've got kind of a primary and a backup narrator, like we've talked about in the past, you would be able to break one person off to be part of the spellcasting ritual in that event while everybody else is dealing with other events and things going on. So, that could be a fun way to do things. So there's a lot about magic. There's a lot of craft skills. There's a lot of craft skills.
What skills are you guys interested in that aren't kind of the combat related? I mean, I want to know really what are of the literally hundreds of skills. I mean, what are people most interested in trying out of their characters, and that are and how do you think they're actually going to get used? How do you think you'll apply those to your campaigns? I mean, knowing that we don't have any idea of what some of the scenarios are yet, there's still a lot that we can extrapolate from the skills and what we might use: trapping, survival, the various crafts, investigative abilities, things like that. I know I know a challenge that the guys are facing is how do you take some of these skills and get people to actually want to use them, and invest in them, which again, more kind of the narrator's task, but still it needs to be promoted to make it so people don't just take the same kind of cookie cutter builds. Like, why would I take masonry or tapping in particular, right? Or, well, actually that one's obvious. So let's say masonry and something more esoteric than that. What do we have here? I'm looking through the list now.
Well, I think the problem comes in play when we're trying to figure out when we're going to be able to use the craft skills that we would normally think would be individual, like blacksmithing or whitesmithing. If I want to do some kind of crafting like that, kind of like what Nero was saying, you almost need somebody else to take you aside to run you through all the minutia of the roles that it's going to take to successfully create something
Right.
that other people in the party are not going to be interested in. Party-wise, some of the ones that, I mean, I don't know how much they aren't necessarily generally available in other games. I think there's some equivalents in D&D that I can think of after 3.0. But one that hasn't been previously that I would pursue in a group is archaeology. And then along with archaeology, for city settings, I would want investigative skills like gossip, um, eavesdropping, things like that. Um, just off the top of my head.
Yeah. I I gotta say a lot of the interest for me is not just using the skills for performing that craft, but using that skill for identifying the quality of, that craft being done, whether it's appraising something for, its craftsmanship and the materials used, or how well somebody performs to be able to assess if they're, doing a really good job at it, or if they're a terrible actor, and whatever the case may be. But then even more so, masonry, for example, you could end up needing that for a lot of things, being able to identify where a weak brick is at because you're trying to bust out of some, nasty, walled area or something because there's things coming for you. Being able to,
And that's. I'm sorry, go ahead.
other masonry things, being able to kind of identify with, the way the patterns are set up. Are we going uphill right now? Are we going downhill right now? Are we flat right now? And there might be other things that help with that, but there might be some cues in masonry that you're able to look at the ways that the bricks are placed and be like, oh, okay, no, I can tell we're definitely at a slight incline right now because this, and this.
And
So,
that's part of what I was kind of figuring is that, these skills aren't going to end up seeing so much, aren't always going to be as important just in the ability to perform them as it will be the knowledge that is, gleaned from being proficient in them and applying that into your adventures. But that still leaves huge amounts of needs for that because really, I mean, if you're going off adventuring, Mason, someone who understands that would be nice so that they can tell if a structure's sound maybe before going into it. Jeweler would be nice because they need to appraise items as you go. Although I think it's safe to say that any shiny bauble you find may have some value, knowing which ones are of definite value might be important so you don't get screwed when you're trying to sell them. Ceramics, glasswork, engraving, all of these skills I see often being more, I shouldn't say more important, but probably potentially as important for their knowledge in your adventure than the actual performance of the craft.
right.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but that does make me wonder what my point spread is going to be like. I guess at the end of the day, how much am I going to invest in trying to have the master, or I shouldn't say mastery. Sorry, how is my character going to know enough to survive out there without being, so spread out that he has no actual skill whatsoever. He's a paper tiger wandering around. It's like, well, yeah, I recognize that. I just don't know what to do with it. And so, which may actually not become a huge deal because, obviously you're in a party, people will be balancing skills out. But I generally don't like making characters around the idea of trying to fill gaps in a party because that implies some outside crafting. I want to create my character, and if he ends up being incredibly redundant with another guy, well, shit happens.
But I would think in Theleston, it would be okay to be redundant. Sometimes you want that. Again, if you're doing ritual magic, then you might want a bunch of people who know how to do ritual magic. You don't want to be focused on ritual magic and not have anybody in the party who can help you with the ritual.
Right, I agree. And yeah, I absolutely agree. It's one of those things where I don't mind the redundancy, and in a world as dangerous as Tellison, that's may come very much in handy when your one guy is, got his leg broken or he's walking back from from Animus realm. But it is one of those things that is just kind of the core of that is just I don't like to craft a character based on what the party needs. I'm just going to create the character to play that character, and so uh, again, how will that match up? I mean, we might have people with all the same skill sets, which that's fine. But again, how that plays out in the long term is, I guess, just what really interests me with these, because they have a lot of skills, and the challenge with a lot of skills is becoming a jack of all trade and a master of none. How are you going to apply that when you're out surviving? How are those going to grow over time? There's no answer to this. I understand that these are all just kind of questions that I'm shotgunning out, but that's where these large skill pools kind of trap me, is when I have such a large pool of abilities, there's kind of an instinctive desire to want to sample from them all. So it'll be interesting to try to narrow that down and really try to figure out what I think will actually be useful, even if I don't have the opportunity to craft, like, say, again, masonry. Even if I'm not going to sit there and actually, pile bricks all day, is that going to be a useful knowledge base to have either way?
I lost Dick again. And he's back.
Yeah, I think, though, that one of the things that we will have to see is whether or not we're going to enjoy overlapping skills. It seems like it should be a plus that you take the skills that you like. Part of it is, I think, going to be deciding on what kind of adventures you're going on. But again,
That
if you
makes
have
sense.
archaeologists in a party, then that should help you, the whole party, be better at archaeology. So that should be a good thing. Cartography, by the way, I wanted to mention. I would think people would take cartography for a lot of the things Nero was talking about before masonry, but cartography could be a great skill to have somebody taking in Theleston for parties.
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to chart your own progress and make your own maps as you go would be highly useful, I imagine, in all situations.
Well, I think the premise of the PMP game is also a really big factor in what you choose and how you choose. PMP games, is, at least in my very limited experience, are really all about adventuring. So there's a lot of exploration, where cartography would be huge. A lot of combat, historically. The way that a lot of us might have imagined playing the Meow in a non-combat kind of fashion. Just, I don't know if that's going to be any kind of viable plan in a PMP game. And so it almost feels like in some ways it's cutting the possibility pool by half, because the crafting is useful, but if you're mostly out adventuring and exploring and combating and stuff like that, then the crafting piece might only happen occasionally.
Well, I hope that it might depend on what kind of adventures you're going after. And I think that one of the changes that we have to try and promote, and maybe we should specifically have some adventures as we're doing our playthroughs early on together, and hopefully sharing them through Twitch, is having adventures that aren't all about combat. That seems to have been the problem with D&D, especially specifically, is the challenges were initially all about combat and acquiring treasure.
In a relatively slow combat system, no less.
Yeah, because it came from war games.
Right.
It was just war games with a fantasy setting. So some of the things that I was looking forward to exploring in Revival is more diplomatic things. Like if I have a baker who is hoping to get a contract where they're baking for the regent, the mayor, whoever, they want a contract, for the biggest party, for the ball that's going to be happening. And what do you have to do? What kind of help do you need in order to bake the best goods and have them presented, maybe have a party of your own. What is it like to one of the things I was really hoping to experience is what is it like to have a dinner party and have people bring things that they've either cooked, but then you also have somebody whose home it is. Everybody decides to pull out the telescope, and somebody will look at the stars and talk to you about what the portents mean. So what kind of scenarios and adventures can you have that's not about combat?
Right.
And when we encounter everything that we encounter in D&D, we almost expected to attack us. And that may not always be a thing when we're trying to figure out who these, I forgot what the name of them, but the ones who are touched by the gods. Maybe there's a cult and they aren't necessarily trying to kill everybody. Maybe they're just trying to stay hidden or have their little magic sessions. Maybe that we're in an area where people are not allowed to use magic, astrology, or use cards to fortune tell, but some people want to do that, and it's our job to find out where they're lurking and to disperse them. But it doesn't necessarily mean we have to kill them in order to do that. So hopefully, I guess it will be up to us to explore and depict what other kinds of adventures we can have besides combat-heavy adventures.
Yeah, I'll be the first to say I wouldn't want to play a game that had no combat, even if I don't have a combatant role myself. But I certainly don't look towards Theleston as like a game where I'm excited just for combat. As great as the system is, as neat as the styles and stances are, there's a world to explore out there. I don't want to have to worry about having to always slave away a large number of my points to surviving in combat. I want to be able to know that I can pile on my cartography, my archaeology, my obscure lore of cultures and civilizations, and that I will actually be able to apply them, not just sit on the sideline, which dates back to earlier fireside chats and even just discussion in general of how they tackle that. But that's an exciting premise of it, that the game and narration is kind of tuned towards being a true adventure, which typically does not involve killing everyone on your path. But maybe if you're taking an adventure with me, but generally speaking, that's not what I hope out of one.
Though, at the same time, I could see somebody doing a campaign that's combat heavy, conscripts, mercenary, military stuff, I could definitely see that, and, instead focusing on how the effects of chaos and madness and manifestation of horrors and stuff, applies in a large-scale war setting rather than just on a small, intimate, individual scale. So I feel like there is definitely room for that, and I think those would be pretty fun campaigns too, but definitely not the default for what Tellison is trying to do by any means.
Right. I think that's part of my out-of-the-box kind of thinking that has to do with how to market it and how to describe it to people, because this is not like your average D&D, PMP, whatever. I mean, I don't know anything because I've never actually sat down and played a PMP game, but so I'm talking out of my hat here. But this is not like other games.
Well, I'd be interested to see too how I forget what you guys call that other game system that we're looking for, where you're exploring for stuff. And it's like I forget the name of the other game, the video game that I'm trying to. What are the game types that we have?
What do you mean?
Like the
Game
Tell us-
types. We have the
Telleston?
PNP. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
okay,
there's the
okay.
PNP, the HOPA.
Yeah,
the
hidden object
HOPA.
adventure. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I hope.
Sorry.
Yeah, so if we apply some of that to the Theleston PNP, where you are searching for things, searching for items, whatever, you could have that kind of the HOPA adventure in the PNP, right?
Well, yeah, I believe they're supposed to somewhat cross the
Overlap.
streams a bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't
there's
think
some,
they're in the same time frame, but yeah.
but some collusion of worlds there. I mean, it's the same world, so events from one will be
Right.
persistent in the other.
Although to be fair, the Hopa is likely to be pretty much on rails because that's how they work. Where a PMP game is whatever you come up with.
Yeah, but you could. But I'm saying you could have the same kind of, um, not obstacles, objective, right? I
Right.
want to find. I mean, I don't know what the hope is going to be like exactly, but there could be clues and puzzles that people are
Yep.
trying to fit together in order to uncover
And
more
tasks.
information. Yeah.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. The other thing is, I have a kind of a question and a comment because I don't know anything about this. When you're the narrator or the DM in a game, do you assign a pool of attributes and people pick and choose what they want out of the pool, and then, or is everybody kind of limited? Is there any kind of limitation? Like if you pick a melee, I'm going to play a melee player. So then is that melee player limited to this group of skills? How does that work?
Yes, typically. So, it happens. There's a couple of ways that happens. So, um, in order to be a mage, you have to have um, been some form of apprentice and learns these spells. So, it's typically unlikely that a warrior, as a warrior, or while they're pursuing warrior activities, that they're going to be able to pick up.
Darn it.
Oh, Diggs.
Um,
Warrior
But,
abilities is where you
yeah.
cut out.
Oh, but it's you are typically not going to be able to increase your warrior abilities while you're studying magical spells or pick up magical spells while you're pursuing your
Okay.
warrior activities.
All right. So
Um,
if we look at this list of the Theleston skills list, the sheet one,
Mm-hmm.
and we look at all this list of whatever I said, however many there are. So if you're sitting down with your group and somebody says, I'm picking, let's use Zero's example of archaeology, cartography, and lore divination, or whatever he said, the lore
Mhm.
thing.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, can somebody else come along and said, well, I wanted cartography too?
oh yeah,
And
that can
they
happen.
can do
Yeah.
that,
Yep.
or do they, or can they not do that because Zero already picked it?
No, each individual player chooses what they want, and they aren't limited by what somebody else has picked already.
So
Yeah.
you could have a whole pool of archaeologists.
Yeah,
who
and a lot of
don't know
times
how
it
to do
helps to
any of
have
this.
it helps to have an overlap of really core skills, things that are like really success dependent to make sure you can move forward in whatever the campaign is. And so you might have two or three people that have a certain magic sight reading skill or something where you can look at something magical and try to gaze at it and learn something about it or whatever, even be able to cast it. And, one person fails, the next person fails, the third person does their skill check. Oh, hey, they succeeded. So you'll and it could be the sort of thing where if it's the sort of thing where you're kind of doing it collaboratively, each person when they do their skill check, if they fail, it still helps the next person. They'll get like a +1 or a +2 bonus to their roll. So and it's all dependent on how the game master decides to handle that encounter. If it's something that they really want the players to be able to pass, but want it to seem real difficult, that can definitely be managed differently than like something that either you pass or fail. It could be really cool, but it's not necessary to the story, or the shortcut that it'll give you is something you'll get to later, whatever it might be.
Okay.
But typically you don't want to, like in D&D, you don't want to have just a group of all fighters or a group of all rogues, because You're going to want somebody intelligent enough to pass certain obstacles. You're going to want somebody strong enough to pass certain obstacles. And, you might want a rogue who's going to be disarming traps and things like that. So you're going to want a wide range of skills throughout. But, I mean, I've always been fascinated to see what kinds of adventures can come out of a group of monks who are healers traveling from one place to the next.
Yeah.
What happens if you have a group of Brogian monks who are traveling to Valor from Sky Pass, and they're monks who are intelligent and have a great deal of knowledge, but they aren't great warriors. What kinds of adventures can you have?
Yeah, that sounds pretty fun.
Yeah.
Idea. That's the hope, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, one other thing that was going on regarding the Revival Wiki,
Right.
yeah, Zero, why don't you give people the details on that?
So Revival Wiki we started in replacement for another wiki that had went up earlier on, and the owner had just kind of run out of time to take care of it. So made a lot of progress. That long story short, with Revival, the Meow being placed on hold while Theleston as the whole world gets built, the wiki is kind of I wouldn't say defunct, but it's not being updated. It's not necessarily a lot of information that we don't already have, and with the changes in directions, a lot of the information which was very Meow focused is unnecessary at this time. So I'm not renewing it. It's along with that, I guess. We are down to 7 days with it left, so I've got a whole slew of things left to copy over still to Theleston Wiki. Most of it's been done. There's still a chunk of information left, especially skills. So while that will be happening in the future, everyone will just want to go to Theleston Wiki. There was a brief discussion about whether or not we were going to do a redirect, but I think at this point it's safe just to kind of direct people towards Theleston Wiki without having to bother keeping a redirect site up.
Yeah, when we
It was a
post
low traffic
message about
enough site that I don't think it'll cause any major issues.
Yeah, when we can put something up on the Revival site about it too.
That much said, some time and effort needs to be put onto the Theleston Wiki, and I've been remiss on that to kind of reorganize it to present the data more useful in a more easily consumed manner. Because right now we just kind of shotgunned everything over to it, so there's a ton of information. You're searching for every bit of it though, because there's no navigation setup, there's no links or categorization. So, but so revival-wiki.com gone by first week of December. Theleston Wiki, all hail Theleston Wiki.
Well, all right. And on that, I think we're going to be wrapping it up here.
I just want to do maybe a heads up because I'd probably like to still continue on skills next time. Maybe roll in a little bit of the gods and talk about some of the gods that would be connected with skills. But I'm also interested in cultures and where which cultures would focus on which skills and how that might be laid out in the PNP player's guide, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
And we actually didn't show that part of the spreadsheet, but there are associations with the gods for all of the skills, so...
Yeah, I don't think we want to show that, but we can talk about that next time.
All right.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, till next time, which we're tentatively going to be doing in 2 weeks, but if we'll see with everybody's schedules how things are going, and we'll let you folks know what's up. And till then, thank you all very much. Have a good one. Enjoy
Thanks
things.
for coming.
Keep watching the fireside chats. Take good notes, and we'll see you next time.
All right.
Bye bye.
Cheers.
Trust no one.